The smartphones are as good as a DSLR camera for what we need it for. Obviously, you're not going to go on safari with your, iPhone and think you're going to get that close up of the lion, way, way in the distance. But for interiors, for going to trade shows, for, behind the scenes of a job, the smartphone is more than sufficient to get a really high quality shot. It's just really learning how to use it and knowing some basics, composition, lighting, editing of photography.
All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. Linda, welcome to Resilient by Design. I'm so excited to finally have you on the podcast. We've been trying to get you on. It just, I don't know, for one reason or another, it didn't happen, but the stars aligned and here we are today. I cannot wait to chat.
Great. Thank you so much. And I totally agree. It's been way too long and I'm very excited to be here and let's answer your questions.
Amazing. So how about before we dive in, why don't you just give our listeners a little bit of a summary of who you are and what it is that you do now?
Sure. So, my background is I was a 25 plus year professional photographer. I had a big studio in downtown Boston and I photographed actors and models. I did commercial headshots and model portfolios, actor portfolios. Then in 2008, we had a big recession, which some of your listeners may not remember, but it was really bad. And I took that opportunity to go back to school for my second lifelong passion, which was interior design, because the photography business literally crashed overnight. Nobody was getting pictures done because of what was going on. Went to design school, and then in 2011, I opened up my current business, Linda Holt Creative, and I did that for 11 years, full service interior design. And then I was always photographing with my smartphone. And, when I'd go to shows or High Point or KBIS, people would say, "Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. How'd you do that?" And everybody kept telling me I should create a course just for interior designers. So during COVID, when I could not work with my clients, I spent that entire year creating my course. And it was definitely a journey figuring out how to do that. I knew nothing. But I created my first class during COVID and I loved it. I loved teaching. I found out it was a passion I didn't know I had. So I am no longer working with clients. I've stopped that about, well, maybe 2 years ago. And I'm all in and I have multiple online smartphone photography classes and they're all geared for interior designers.
I love your story. I can see some similarities in myself. And before we would hit record today, Linda and I were chatting about our mutual passion for teaching, how we've just sort of had this calling. So I love that we share that in common. Okay. So you're teaching not how to take photographs because you're a professional photographer. So that's really cool. I actually didn't know that part of your story, that like models and all that jazz. That's
Yeah.
very different. Photographing like portraits and people is different than photographing spaces. And so you must have
Yes.
a real breadth of knowledge that you bring to the table. But what's interesting is you're not teaching designers necessarily how to use like an SLR and set up a whole professional photo shoot. Am I right? You're using
I
what
am
we have on
using
us.
exactly. And, 5 years ago, really, I would say it was not possible to get a portfolio worthy shot using your iPhone or your smartphone, but that has all changed. And today, I can't stress this enough. The smartphones are as good as a DSLR camera for what we need it for. Obviously, you're not going to go on safari with your, iPhone and think you're going to get that close up of the lion, way, way in the distance. But for interiors, for going to trade shows, for, behind the scenes of a job, the smartphone is more than sufficient to get a really high quality shot. It's just really learning how to use it and knowing some basics, composition, lighting, editing of photography. And I have friends that are professional photographers that are now using their smartphone. One of my friends is shooting weddings using her smartphone.
What?
Yes, you do not
What?
need
You
a
just blew my mind.
you do
Ah,
not need a digital camera. I mean, and it's really true. The smartphones today are amazing.
wow. Okay, Linda, it's so funny. I feel like we talk, especially as coaches, as us interior designers that are now coaching interior designers, we always suggest to hire a professional.
Hmm.
You need professional photos of your spaces that you design, or the homes, your client spaces, what have you, so that you look professional. So it
Hmm.
sounds like I'm hearing you say, yes, you need professional photos to look professional, but what you're saying is you don't actually need to fork over several $1,000s to a professional photographer. You could do it yourself.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And um, even if you hire the professional, I mean, it's definitely an investment in time of your own time to
Yes.
learn how to do this. It's not, I'm not saying you go into a finished space, point and shoot, point and shoot, point and shoot. There you go. It is time consuming. You need to
Yeah.
learn how to do it. I use a tripod. If it's a dark space, I bring in lighting, all of which I teach in my class. But you, if a new designer, especially, they don't have necessarily the budget to hire a professional. So I really initially created my course for sort of the new designer because I don't know, depending where people live, but in Boston, just to have
Mhm.
a professional interior photographer show up to the job, you're looking at $3,000 minimum. And a lot of new designers are that maybe their profit on their first job, especially if they're
Yeah.
doing one space. Um, so I even say, hire the professional maybe for the money shots, the hero
Mhm.
shots, but there's no reason why you can't go in and do the detail shots, the vignettes, save some money, and do that part yourself because you
Mhm.
absolutely can. So I'm not saying
Mhm.
don't use a professional. If you can't do it so it looks professional, then yes, you need to go hire the professional. But if you have the time and maybe not the budget, then it's worthwhile to learn how to use your phone to do it.
I love this. I love that we're having this conversation because a lot of my listeners are early in their design
Hmm.
business journey, or they haven't
Yep.
even launched yet. And so
Yep.
they hear me say, you need to hire a photographer. But at the same time, to your point, I love that you said that, Linda. Like some people are lucky to have a $3,000 profit. I didn't
Hmm.
have that as a profit
Oh,
when I
me
was
either.
starting.
Me either. Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah.
And what happened, another part of my story that I didn't tell you, another reason why I ended up having to leave photography is after 25 years of lugging really heavy lighting equipment, lenses, cameras, and all the gear, I had developed some really serious spinal issues, specifically neck. And I had to go see a spine specialist who told me I was going to have spinal surgery if I didn't put down the heavy equipment and stop lifting like that day. So that, along with a recession, I'm like, okay, this is done. I literally did not pick up a heavy camera again. And now today, I don't even own a DSLR camera. I only have my smartphone. Um,
Wow.
so, and when I started, when I got out of school, and my first job was like, do a bedroom for a friend of mine or, a small family room. And I would charge, I think I was charging $75 an hour. And it was all said and done, my profit may have been, this is the early days, 1,500 bucks. So I didn't have the money to hire a professional, but I knew nothing about interior photography. I didn't know, literally nothing about it. So that's when I started kind of going on this journey of learning how to use my smartphone because my early smartphone photos were terrible. They were dark, they were out of focus, they were crooked. I literally did not know how to use the phone. But I had to force myself to learn how to use it. And that's when I thought, okay, I figured this out. It's really easy with the phone because the phone does pretty good exposure, pretty good, with
Hmm.
figuring it all out. So that's when I decided I could really teach designers how to do this because I basically started where they were, knowing nothing about interior photography.
Yeah, this is really great. I mean, I'm trying to think back to my first project. I definitely didn't hire for my first website. it was my house. It was pictures of my house, which I hadn't actually
Mhm.
quote unquote done. There was like
Mhm.
a few things, and I remember taking pictures. I did use a digital camera at the
Mhm.
time. I did my best, and that's
Mhm.
what I used for a while until I had a project where I thought, okay, it's worth the investment.
Yes.
But I mean, smartphones have come such a long way since then. Like the cameras are
Unbelievable.
amazing.
They really are. And I think that one of the problems is really with designers, it's their mindset. They think of their cell phone as a subpar digital camera when they should be thinking of it as a $1,200 high-end camera and treat it as such and take the same amount of time composing the shot, thinking about the lighting with their smartphone as they would if they had some big digital camera on a tripod. They wouldn't just like point and shoot. They would take the time, and they need to spend that kind of time thinking about the shot and not think about the smartphone
Mhm.
as just this, cheap subpar camera, because it is not. It is
Yeah.
amazing.
And I actually think, and this is what you teach, I imagine, is that these smartphones that we can are capable of so much more than we're using them for.
Absolutely. That's the number one thing I find is when I teach my classes, people are like, their mind is blown because there's all of these hidden features that they don't even know
Yeah.
that's inside the phone that can help designers. And when you
Yeah.
buy your phone, it doesn't come with like a camera manual. You have to figure this out. And I spent really about 18 months when I went down this deep dive of trying to figure out how to use my smartphone. I watched YouTube videos. I read all these blogs about using it, and I kind of had to teach myself. I'm not a technical person, and I was so used to controlling it, everything with my digital camera, that the whole point and shoot thing, just none of my photos looked good when I pointed and shoot. But I had to
Mhm.
learn how to use all those hidden features. Then you can use your phone just like a digital camera. You can control the focus. You can control the exposure. You can
Mhm.
use all those features.
Even some of the basic settings. I mean, I would not call myself techie. I am not
Hmm.
somebody who even really like thrives and gets excited about it. I get a new, like my mother-in-law is more techie than I am, and she's 73. She's like, well, why
Hmm.
aren't you doing this? And why aren't you using that? I'm like, I don't know. I just don't think about that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then once it's shown to me, it's amazing. And I was recently somewhere, I'm trying to think if it was in Whistler. I was on a retreat and I was trying to take a picture of something. I was like, oh, the color, it's just not telling the story of the
Hmm.
color, right?
Hmm.
I have a good enough eye to see that when I took the picture, I'm like, it's looking so yellow, and that wasn't the
Hmm.
point. And I wanted to,
Hmm.
the point of the picture was the color of the fabric or whatever.
Yeah.
And and this girl was like, "Oh, well, didn't you know you can change like the type of light or whatever?" I don't even remember what it was that she showed me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, no, I've never I've never
Yeah.
tried that." And we found the one that was the perfect color match. And then
Hmm.
the next time I went to take a picture, it wouldn't have been that. It was, and it was just like the simplest little thing
Yeah. Yeah.
that I never would have thought about. I
Right.
know it exists, and actually, I'll be honest with you, Linda, I think for someone who's like me, it feels overwhelming.
Hmm.
Like looking at my phone, all
Hmm.
the things it can do. It's like these cars nowadays. Cars are so, my dad is 81. He
Hmm.
got this new car because he had an accident. So they put him in a new car. It's the same car, but it's the new version. And
Mm.
now everything is touch everything. Like there's no
Yes. Yes.
buttons.
Yep.
And he's like comes to our house on a weekly basis asking us to help him with the car, and where I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
listen to the radio, and what happened to
Right.
this and now it's gone.
Yep.
And I get in the car and I don't even know if I can
Yeah.
help him.
I
And
know.
I'm 44. Like
Yep.
I'm half his age. So
Right.
it
Right.
really it can feel intimidating. I know
Hmm.
that might sound silly to some who are like, it's just an
Hmm.
iPhone, Rebecca. Do you find that with your students?
I
First
totally
they
agree
feel
with you.
that?
Not now, but I remember when early in the day when I got my phone and I didn't know how to use it. I was too scared to even go into the settings because I didn't know anything about what the phone should be. I didn't know what the settings should be. I just assumed the phone came like out of the box, ready to go. But you have to go in and actually change some settings to make it more favorable for what we do, which is, photographing mainly interiors. But I was like you, not techie. I was scared of the phone. I was afraid I was going to break something in the phone. I totally get it. I don't feel that way anymore, only because it's been so long. And now I'm
Well,
very
you're an
familiar with
expert
a
now.
phone. Well, now I am, but I started not knowing anything. nothing. I mean, I was making the most ridiculous mistakes with the phone because I was too scared to,
Yeah.
my friend once showed me that she did this large text and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how did you do that?" And
Oh, can you show me that? I
she
need
went
to do
into
that.
settings and I'm like, "Oh," she said, "My daughter did it for me." And I'm like, "Wow, I mean, still there are so many things I still don't know about it, but the camera I
The
know.
camera's
But
your
all the
expertise.
other settings, like making the font big and there's something you can do with a magnifying glass in settings that I don't know about."
Oh
So,
my goodness. It is intimidating. And also, like you said, there's that fear, oh, what if I do something and I mess it up and then I don't know
mhm,
how to go back and fix it?
yes. Yeah, that was my fear.
So I want to just also circle back to why designers, like I want to talk about the pros and cons a little bit. Not so
Mhm.
much maybe the cons. I mean, the cons are obvious,
Right.
it's you have time, you have to put in your
Yep.
own time to learn how to do
Yes.
it, and that
Yep.
might be a deterrent for some.
Sure.
But when you have limited resources, like
Mhm.
why are some of the other reasons? Why would designers want to use their mobile phone, their cell phone, to take pictures instead of a professional photographer? We mentioned already money, right?
Sure.
Like that is like probably the most obvious
Yep.
um, bonus is that
Mhm.
you're saving thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. But for me, even bigger than that is that if you don't take the photo, you don't own the photo. The designers have to be empowered to own their copyright. There's so many horror stories right now of what's going on because professional photographers have figured out how easy it is to register their photos now. There are companies that do this for them,
Hmm.
and they are suing designers left and right. And I can just give one quick example of a
Oh,
good
yes,
friend of
please
mine.
do. Because people are listening.
She
They're like, what? This can happen? Your
Oh my
photographer
gosh,
can
if
sue
you
you?
have to have an ironclad contract knowing exactly when you can use your own photos and when you cannot, because those photos don't belong to you. They belong to the photographer that took them. So a very good friend of mine, she posted a photo of one of her projects on Instagram, and she tagged a vendor. I forget what if it was a lighting vendor or whatever, but she tagged the vendor, so it was in her contract that she could use those photos freely on social media. And also, so that was all fine. But what happened was the vendor had an intern who took that photo and put it on their website. Lawsuit. She ended up, it was such a nightmare. $10,000 is what she ended up paying to
Wow.
settle that. And another story of a very A-list designer that I heard, her photographer took her room photos and put them on his own website with on that you might like it or whatever that shopping is. He tagged everyone and but made it something similar so people could shop the room. All of
Like
that's legal.
house. Like
All of
that's
that
like what
is
house.
legal if you
Oh my
take the
God.
photo. So it's getting really scary because there's so many lawsuits right now pending. Um, I did a talk. I went down to New York and I did a talk at IDS Long Island, and there was a photographer who came, a professional who came up and told me that he's making more money suing photographers for unauthorized use of his photos than he is on the jobs he's doing. So that tells you something right now. And all the photographers have wised up to this because it's so
Mm,
lucrative. They can make a lot of money if they find their photo being used and it's said in the contract you can use it for social media and your website. Anything outside of that, if they use it, they can be in trouble. So
mm-hmm.
to me, owning, the copyright, and also when you take your own photo, it's yours. You can like instantly post it. You don't have to wait for the photos to, get edited from the professional and then sent to you. And, they may take 50 and you get four, you have them all. You
Right.
can take as many as you want from as many different angles, use them on social
Mm-hmm.
media, however you'd like to. So it's just really, I think, empowering yourself to own your photos. Um,
Yeah. I
that's
think that's something too that designers don't realize. And that's something I didn't realize when I started out in the industry. And I think things
mhm,
have changed in the last decade, but
mhm,
I've worked with various photographers and I
mhm,
have had the experience, never, thank goodness, any lawsuits, but
mhm,
multiple situations where I've had a photographer email me to say, I saw this
mm,
contractor used our photo on their
mm.
social
Oh, it
media.
happens all the time.
blah blah blah. It was like a whole
Yeah.
thing. Then they had to pay a
Yep. Yep.
licensing fee to that photographer.
Yep.
Or I've had it where I've used the photos in my own social media,
Mm-hmm.
but didn't tag the photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
maybe that was a stipulation in her contract. I don't
Yeah.
remember, but it was
Right.
got to the point where it was so annoying because every
Mm-hmm.
single time that photographer would send me an email saying, you posted a picture, but I wasn't tagged. You posted a
Right.
picture, but I wasn't tagged. And I
Right.
thought, oh my gosh, this is my work. It's been
Right.
posted before.
Exactly.
It got to the point where then I stopped using those photos
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
it was just a pain. It was a burden. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah.
And I did find a photographer. There's some photographers still out there who allow you to have full licensing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the interiors photographer I work with does.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's one of the main reasons why he is so busy,
Yeah.
because I don't have to worry about that. I can pitch to a
Right.
magazine. The magazine
Yeah.
can use the photos. I don't have to go back to him, and then
That
he
is
would make
very,
extra
he's
money.
a rare because most,
Yeah.
that is like, 99.9% of photographers do not give up their copyright for you to
Yeah.
use. So that's very rare you have
It
that
is.
person.
It
So
is
that is
very rare. And, takes a certain type of person, but it, you think, oh, it's fine. I'll just follow. It becomes annoying. It becomes annoying. I'm going to be
Mhm.
totally honest. Like
Right.
thinking back to that time where I got kind of annoyed that I paid for the photo shoot, right? So say I
Exactly.
paid like
That's
3,500,
sure.
right? Great.
Yeah.
Then that photographer is taking those images
Mm-hmm.
and is now pitching them
Sure.
to
Yep.
vendors and
Yep.
whoever to
Right.
make more money.
Absolutely.
So you got paid for
Absolutely.
the work and now you're trying to
Right.
get paid again?
Right. They think it's their, they think,
It's
you can take
so
2 years to
weird.
design a room, and yet you hire someone, you pay them good money, but then you can't do with the photos what you want. So to me,
Yeah.
that made
Yeah.
me angry. And now I was a former professional, and so I've seen both sides of this. But doing headshots, I think, which what I did for models and actors was a little different than a 2-year project where we chose every single thing in the room and worked so hard on it for the photographer to think they own that room. They
Hmm.
don't. So it was maddening for me, which is why I thought, all right. And I did hire in the very beginning, I hired an interior photographer because I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't use my DSLR camera. I wasn't good on the smartphone. I hired somebody, and not only did it cost a lot of money, but when he sent me the digital photos, his had a watermark on the bottom of every
Oh
single image
my.
with his copyright and name. And I said, I can't use these. I'm not going to put my photos on Instagram with your copyright on it. So I had to fight him to take off the watermark. It was
Wow.
really frustrating, but that was years ago. That was,
Yeah.
back in like 2011, but they don't do that anymore. But again, it was just an example of how photographers
Hmm.
firmly believe they own your photos, which they do
Yeah,
legally.
it does feel like it's something that needs to change in our industry, and we're not here to fight that fight, but
Right, right, right.
it does feel a little wrong. But that's my personal opinion, and I'm
Yeah,
happy to have that debate with a photographer.
yeah. Oh, they'll be happy to debate you on it,
Oh, I'm sure. I actually did a photography and publishing workshop a few years ago with a magazine editor and a professional photographer, and we had that conversation. Like we
Hmm.
had it was a really healthy debate
Hmm.
about why, and everyone came at it from a different angle. And there was no one got angry, but it is
Hmm.
certainly it's a healthy debate topic. But if you
Hmm.
want to steer clear of all of that and you
Hmm.
don't want to deal with those headaches and the potential of a lawsuit, like you mentioned, you can just take them on your phone.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I'm curious your thoughts on what makes, without going into teaching all the
Hmm.
technical, but
Yeah.
what makes an iPhone photo look professional? Like what aspects are there that you can do, whether it's filters or is it composition or is it your brand? Like what aspect is what is it about a quote unquote professional iPhone photo that makes it good enough to use on your website or your Instagram or what have you?
Yeah. I think it's really three things. It's composition, and a lot of designers don't really know how to compose a photo. I think the biggest mistake designers do is they just use their, the lens that it opens up to, that default lens, which is pretty wide angle, and they try to get the whole room in. A professional photographer would never approach it like that. They think, what is the focal point in this room? What do we really want to show the viewer? They're not just going in and capturing the whole room. That becomes a real estate shot. But I think too many designers approach their room like a real estate photographer and just shoot the whole room. And we see ceiling, we see too much floor, we see too much furniture. They need to think about composition. And there's really two ways in interior photography. It's called one-point composition, which is shooting straight onto your subject, or two-point composition, which is shooting at an angle. And so you have to decide, is this room going to be better if I shoot it this way or if I shoot it this way? So they need to think about composition. The second thing I think is lighting. A lot of designers just show up when the time allows and they think they're going to be able to get a good shot. You have to really time your shoot.
Mm.
You don't want to show up to photograph the room when sun is streaming through the window, causing all these, bright hot spots, streaming across furniture, the
Yeah.
floor. So you need to time your shoot for when the room is bright, but the light is still fairly even. So I think composition
Yeah.
is important. Lighting is important. But the
Yeah.
third thing is editing. You said you didn't know how to, make that photo that looked a little bit too yellow. That is going to happen in probably most photos. So you really need to go in and white balance the photo. Very easy to do. I do all my editing on my phone. It takes seconds, but you obviously want to make sure that it looks color correct. It doesn't look too warm or too cool. You want to fix the perspective, which is really important because, when you're shooting an interior, a dead giveaway of a bad smartphone photo is when you have those lines that are bending inward or bending outward. You need
Mm.
a nice straight perspective of the room. Again, that depends on several factors, how you shoot it, how you hold your phone, but also you can easily fix perspective problems in editing. So, I mean, any good photo, whether it's taken with a $10,000 camera or a $900 cheap smartphone, you
Mm-hmm.
want to have good composition, you want to have good lighting, and you need to tweak it with editing. So if you do those three things, there's no difference between a digital camera that you pay a lot of money for or a smartphone. It's just the same principles because the phone basically will do the same thing as a digital camera. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
you need to have composition, lighting, and then edit it for that
So,
final.
a follow-up question to that, because I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm like having these little light bulb moments right now.
Hmm.
First of all, okay, I've got two things in my head. The first one was when you talked about lighting. I
Hmm.
never like, duh, obviously we want good lighting, but I'm like, oh yeah. So, do you recommend that designers bring their own lighting, or would that just be unrealistic because you need such big lights to light interiors? Or do you recommend designers really kind of time it and plan it around the natural light? And then what happens if you're doing like a powder room or, something that doesn't have a window, or if it's like a dark space? Do we need
Yep.
our own lights?
Yes, this is right out of my class. I have a whole module about lighting. So, um, I use lighting. And if anyone's interested in what I use, it's right on my website. It says my smartphone accessories. But, the smartphones are amazing, but they're not a magic wand. They can't light a room that doesn't have lighting. And you never want to shoot with the lights on. And I won't get into that whole reason, but you never want to have the lights on. So ideally, if I was a professional interior photographer, or if I'm just coming with my smartphone, a professional is going to decide if the room is bright enough to use no lights. And most professionals prefer to shoot with natural available light, meaning they
Mm.
time the shoot also. But if it's an internal powder room with no windows and it's pitch dark, there's no way a professional can shoot that with his digital camera or her digital camera without
Mhm.
bringing in lights. And there's no way we can shoot it without bringing in lights. So I use these very affordable lights. They're called ProMaster. I get them on Amazon. They come in a set of two. They're just soft boxes. They set up like two quick umbrellas. They're so easy to set up.
Mm.
They have 20-foot long cords. You can just plug them into a regular outlet, move them around. And I would say I use them on maybe 50% of my jobs because now I'm photographing. I don't design anymore, but my friends still do. So they will have me help them with their photography. And I just recently did I have a friend that lives in London and she designed a pet a terre in Manhattan. And by the time we were able to shoot, because I was shooting on install day, it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and the light was kind of
Mm,
gone. Thank
mhm,
goodness I lugged those lights down with me on the train because I needed to use those lights to light the room. So, but
mhm,
they're so easy to use. And I think people are very intimidated about lighting. It's not like strobe lights, it's not what your professional would bring in. These are just big square boxes with a soft cover on them to diffuse
mhm.
the light. You just plug them in. You can point them at the ceiling so the light will just kind of, bounce around the room. You can point them into the room. They're so easy to use. But yes, you
Hmm.
definitely, if you're going to really do this seriously for portfolio worthy shots and the
Mhm.
room doesn't look really well lit, then you do have to use lights.
Invest in that. Is
Yeah.
it kind of like something like what I'm using? Oh, wait, you can't see that. Oh, they can't reach me. Why can't it reach? I was hoping to show you guys. Oh my God. Now I want to know if I have the right lighting. It's like I got this thing. It's like,
Yeah, I mean
uh,
that looks similar. These are called soft boxes, the ones that
ugh,
I use.
okay.
But yeah, it looks similar. It has a white
It
diffuser
has a
over it.
diffuser, but it
Yeah.
has like an LED light
Yes.
in it and it's on a
It
stand.
yeah. Well, these lights don't use an LED light. They use a well, maybe it is an LED, but it's a, and again, this is on my website, what the bulbs I use. They're professional video bulbs. So they are,
Oh,
very
okay.
powerful. So they will light the room. So I don't know what you have, how
Maybe that's what
powerful
I
that
need for my
light is.
podcast. I'm like,
Well,
ooh,
they
I'm gonna go to your
they're they
website
they're
now.
$149 for a set of two, and they come with everything, the light stands, the boxes, everything. Only thing they don't come with are the bulbs. You have to buy the bulbs separately. But the
Okay.
bulbs have something like, I don't know, 2,000 hour usage, and they're
Wow.
professional video bulbs. So that's
Oh
really
my
what
God,
you need.
amazing. Okay. So then the second thing that came to mind when we were just talking, so I don't want to forget it, was when you mentioned editing.
Mm,
Because I know that the iPhone, like you said, has so many settings.
hmm.
Or any actually, are we just talking about iPhones? This is a good question. We didn't talk
No,
about that.
I use both a Samsung and I have actually three phones, but um I'm not talking phone specific. I know a lot of most designers have an iPhone, but
Hmm.
um, I teach for all phones. And the
Okay.
only different, nothing changes no matter what phone you have. It's not anything different other than learning the features of your phone.
Right.
And they all basically have the same features and function. It's just knowing where on your phone they are or how to turn them on.
Hmm.
In the iPhone, they might be on one place, and on the Samsung, they're actually in a different place. So it's just learning how to use the features, but the
Got it.
features are all the same. It doesn't matter what kind of phone you
Is
have.
one type of phone, because I remember, so my husband used to be all Android. Like he
Mm-hmm.
had a Samsung, he had a Google
Mm-hmm.
phone,
Yep.
and he really resisted getting the iPhone, even though everything else in his ecosystem was Mac and all that,
Yep.
iPads. And because he said the camera was better. Is that still true? Or is there a phone that has a better camera, or is it just
I
constantly
think
changing?
today, honestly, all the phones have an amazing camera, and I test them all. My husband is a Pixel user. My kids are Samsung users. I'm an iPhone user and a Samsung user. And it really depends. It seems like every time I get a new phone, like when I got my new Samsung, I liked that camera better than the current iPhone I was using. But then I upgraded my iPhone and now I
Hmm.
like my iPhone camera better. They're
Got it.
they're they're all amazing. I don't know if I could really say one is better than another. I recently saw I don't know, it was Consumer Report or something did a listing of the best cameras, and the camera that they rated best was one that I'd never even heard of. It was a Japanese brand. I don't even know if it's sold in this country, but they
That's
rated
hilarious.
that. It was called a
Yeah.
Huey or something like
Oh
that.
wow, never heard of
But
that.
that they rated as number one. But all the others were in the top five. Every phone was,
Hmm.
they're amazing. So to put it in perspective, when I was shooting professionally and I was having things published all the time, my camera I was using was 5 megapixels. That was my last professional camera. The new phones today are 24 megapixels. So
Yeah,
people
wow.
worry about the quality. That is no longer an issue for publication. Is there the
Mhm.
new phones? My current phone is 10 times better than the last $5,000 digital
Mm.
camera I was using, shooting professionally and having on in magazines all the time. So,
Okay, so interesting. That brings up another question. Yeah, I never thought about that. Are these photos, it sounds like you're saying yes, but the photos that we take with our iPhone, I always pictured them for use digitally only. But
mm-mm,
you're saying that the quality is good enough that like a magazine
yes.
would print that photo.
They would, yes.
Wow.
The phones today, the newer ones are all 24 megapixels. And for print, you want to have about at least 12. So you've got double what you need.
Wow.
But also, if you want to get really technical, you can shoot in RAW mode, which is 48 megapixels.
Oh, yes, I've seen that as an option. Oh
Yeah.
gosh.
So yeah,
Definitely. Wow.
there's no concern about print or digital publication with the newer phones. Now, if you have an iPhone 6, you have an issue. That's only 12 megapixels. But if you have an iPhone 12 or above, you have 24
It
megapixels.
is time to upgrade. And also, I will add that if you are using your phone for work, this is a business expense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I buy a new one every year for that reason because first of all, I need to know the new phones because I teach,
Mm,
but also it's a business expense.
yeah.
You can just deduct this. And I know designers that will hold on to their iPhone 6s and their iPhone 8. I don't know why. Because when they
Because
upgrade the
there's nothing
camera,
wrong with it. I'm like
mind
them.
blown. They're not using the camera, but if they when
Right.
once they do and they look at the difference in their photos,
Yeah.
they cannot believe the difference in
Yeah.
the quality of their photos.
Okay, so the last question I have for you, which came up when you were talking earlier, was that second thing, which was the editing.
Hmm.
How much of a successful iPhone, sorry, I'm saying iPhone because that's what I have. How much of a
Hmm.
successful um, mobile phone, or whatever you want to call it, photo has to do with settings before you take it or while you're taking it and or after. Like traditional photographers, obviously there's a lot to that they're working on
Hmm.
as they take the picture for lighting and everything. But I know that
Hmm.
a professional photographer, when I'm on a shoot with a professional photographer, they are doing multiple exposures, right?
Hmm.
Because then they're going to do a lot post production. They're
Hmm.
going to do a lot of
Hmm.
editing after the fact.
Hmm.
Are you, and I'm sure you teach this in your course, but how much of it is getting the right settings from the get go or during the shoot, and how much of it is editing after the fact?
I think it's should be done as much as possible while you're shooting because you can't rely on editing to fix a bad photo. So you really want to get the composition right, you want to get the lighting right, and you can fix the exposure manually in your phone. You can override what the phone thinks the exposure should be. So if you are taking a photo, say in a living room, and it looks too dark, you can fix that manually. It's better to fix it, you know, in the phone with the settings and take the photo the best you can. Editing should only be relied on to kind of bring it over the finish line. It should look like 90% good, but maybe you want to just tweak the perspective a little bit and fix the perspective, or maybe you want to increase the saturation just a tiny bit, or maybe the shadows look just a little bit dark and you want to brighten the shadows. That's where editing comes in. But editing shouldn't be relied upon to make your photo look good. Your photo should already look good. Editing should make it look amazing.
Okay.
Um, and
That's actually,
today,
I like that. That sounds amazing because I think people think, oh my gosh, I don't know how to edit. And like, do I need fancy softwares and
yeah,
programs and
no,
all that?
I'll tell you the app I use. I use Snapseed. Probably most of your audience have heard of that. It's a free app from Google. It works on any phone. I do all my editing, all of it on my phone. Even the
Hmm.
professional jobs that I shoot, I edit all the photos on the phone in Snapseed.
Snapseed? Is that what you
Yep.
said? I've never
Eh,
heard of that.
It's
Snapseed.
SNAP, Snap, SEED. It's from
Okay.
Google and it's just a free editing
Mhm.
app and it's so easy. And I like you, I'm as non-technical as you said you were. And when I first
I
downloaded,
don't
I
believe it.
thought, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to do this. I learned it literally in like 10 minutes. A 5-year-old could use Snapseed. It is so easy to use.
Well, yeah. I mean, kids these days, my 10-year-old is showing me, Mommy, why did you do this on your phone? Why
Yeah,
don't you do that on the
yeah,
iPad? He's arranging. I'm like, what? How do you even know how to
yeah,
do these things?
yeah,
I've
I
been doing
know.
this for years and I don't know. It's just so
Right.
intuitive. It's just
It
a different
is.
world.
It absolutely is.
Oh my gosh, this has been such a great conversation. I'm so happy to finally we got to have it. Before we wrap up today, what is your last nugget of wisdom to share with the designers who are listening?
Well, I think what I'd like to tell them, especially if they are interested in really going forward with empowering themselves to own their copyright and take their own photos, is to know that this isn't going to happen overnight. It takes practice. It's just like, starting a business or working out at the gym or learning to play the piano. You can't just like, have someone show you a few things and think you're going to master this. So I don't want them to get frustrated because it does take a lot of practice. um, there's this old saying that you can read every book ever written about swimming. You can sit at the pool all day and watch people swim, but if you don't get in the water, you'll never learn how to swim. It's the same thing
Yep.
with photography. You can't just like watch one of my videos or see one of my posts on Instagram and think, oh, I can do that. You really need to practice. And everybody has a home they live in, whether it's an apartment or a house. They can start practicing in their own home. But it does take practice. And I don't want people to feel discouraged that, oh, well, she can do this because she was a professional. I
Hmm.
started where everyone else is starting because I was a headshot photographer. I knew nothing about interiors. So I just don't want people to get discouraged. I want them just, to keep practicing and they will get it. And also, this is possible. It's not a crazy, idea that they can shoot their own projects because my students are all shooting their own projects now, and I'm amazed at how
Mm,
great everybody is doing. So I
I
just want
love
them
it.
to really believe they can do it because these phones are amazing. They are not a subpar digital camera.
I love that. You can do it, but you need to practice. It's all
Absolutely.
practice. It's like
It
anything,
is.
right? We get better the
Exactly.
more reps we put in.
Right. Exactly. Exactly true.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for joining me today, Linda. Can you let everyone listening know where they can find and follow you?
Sure. I am Linda Holt Creative everywhere. No matter what, just type in Linda Holt Creative on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, wherever you want to find me. It's Linda Holt Creative. And I'm super easy to reach. I respond to everybody's DMs or emails, whatever. And my website is lindaholtcreative.com. And if they're interested, that's where they can go and see those, what we talked about, the equipment that I use, the supplemental things, the lights and things like that. And also, if they want to check out any of my classes, they're all on my website.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Linda.
You're so welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much again for having me on.
Well, there you have it. What do you think? I'm a little bit sad that I didn't have Linda in my world when I was starting my business. I totally could have used her course and advice. If you guys are wanting to check out Linda's offerings, you can definitely go to the show notes. We've linked everything in our show notes, so go check it out there. I'm really happy to have had Linda start this conversation. I asked her after we went off air, actually, if she would be a guest speaker inside Designer's Room and actually do a workshop, and she agreed. So I'm very excited for that one to come to our Designers Room members soon, because the more we can learn, even if we still want to work with a professional photographer, there's always going to be those times where it doesn't make financial sense. Like, you might have a smaller project, or maybe you've done some updates to your home and you would love to have those professional photographs that you could use on Instagram or pitch to a magazine. It doesn't always make sense to hire and pay 3 grand, give or take, for a professional photographer. And so I think having that flexibility, having that knowledge to be able to do it yourself is really empowering. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Linda. It would mean so much to me if you could make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. And could you pretty please leave us a review? It means so much to me if you can leave us a review. It'll bump our rankings so that more designers can find us and more designers can benefit from all of the knowledge that is shared here on this podcast. Thank you in advance, and I'll see you soon.